Good evening to you guys. Glad you're tuning in. We're going to be in chapters 46 and 47 tonight. Super excited about that. How is everybody out there? You probably can cut me back a little bit, Bill. Check. That's probably good. I'll holler at you again if it starts ringing. Can you hear that ring back there when it did? Okay, good. If you hear it again, cut her back. How is everybody? Do I have to be quiet? Do I need to be quiet? I mean, talk quietly. I can see that. Yeah, that's good. Beautiful day. Gorgeous day. It's awesome. Should be a beautiful day tomorrow as well. Last week we got that request right in the middle of class for Ray. Ray is able to be at home, doing well. Still a little weak, but recovering well. So just wanted to give you an update on that in case you were curious about that. Let's pray, and then we'll dive right in, get cranking. God, you are better than good. I wish, Father, we had better words to describe our appreciation and awe of you. Awesome is the best we've got, but God, you are so better than that. And so thanks for what you continue to do in our lives, through our lives, around our lives. And God, it's not always the good things that we see. We see some bad things that come into our paths, but we know that you are there and that you can leverage them in a great way. And so we thank you for all things. Thank you for the way that you teach us, the way that you walk with us, and the way that you guide us. Thanks for this time. I pray that you will bless it. Bless not only the conversation that will ensue, but how we hear each other, but most importantly from you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. I got so excited today. I was studying. I got done with my chapter, and I thought, you know what, I'll go on to the next chapter. And then I started reading, and I'm like, no, we'll just wait. And I started typing my notes up, and I realized I skipped a chapter. So I had to go back. I had to pick up 46. So 47 was done pretty quick. But 46 is an easy chapter, so God knew what he was doing. So let's start in chapter 46. We'll read the first 4 verses. So Israel, remember Israel is Jacob, took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father, Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob, and he said, here I am. I just want to pause just for a quick second because I don't talk a lot about this in our notes. But what a great response that we should all have. This may be the one of the first times, if not the first time, where the response of the person that God is speaking to specifically is, here I am. And so that to me is classic. If we go all the way back or all the way forward into even some of the prophets, when Isaiah is spoken to, he says, here I am. To me, that should just be our response all the time. As soon as we hear God speaking, before he even tells us what it's going to be about, what's going to happen in our lives, where he's going to take us, what he's going to allow, it should automatically be, here I am. Whatever it is, I'm in. And that's a scary place to be, just so you know. It takes a while for us to get there, and even when we're there, it still gets a little nerve-wracking, but that should be our goal, is to be at the place that no matter what, we can say, here I am. And that's what Jacob is doing here, Israel. And remember, Israel has lost a lot. He lost a son. Then realizing his sons have lied and deceived him over these 30 years. And now he's going to see his son. And there's a lot going on. And in the travels, in the going back after they've loaded up their carts, he's going to this new land, which, by the way, remember, is not the promised land. He is going to Egypt. He's leaving the promised land, going into Egypt, and he has this vision. God visits him, and here's what God says. I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. So what's interesting in all of this is God's telling, hey, listen, I know I've told your father and your father's father, your grandfather, that this area, this Canaan land, is the land flowing of milk and honey. This is where I'm sending you. But right now, we're going to leave this alone. I'm going to take you into Egypt, and there is where I'm going to make a great nation. Now, you're going to think I'm dumb, but you laughed way too quick at that. But all my life, anytime I hear children of Israel, I think automatically the big Jewish nation, right? But the children of Israel is referring to the children of Jacob, who is Israel. And why I'm just now at 48 years old, almost 48, figuring that out, I will never understand. But it makes total sense. It's all of the above, because this great nation is going to be the true children of Israel, and it's coming from the children of Israel, the boys. Anyway, that was a complete side note. So they're headed to see Joseph. Can you imagine what Dad is thinking? This entire journey all the way back. I'm going to see my son. And if you'll remember at the very end of the chapter, remember when they revealed to Jacob, Israel, that Joseph was still alive, he kind of loses life there for a quick second. Like his life is just taken from him. It's almost like he can't catch his breath. And then he's invigorated knowing that I'm going to go see my son, my favorite son, the one I thought was dead, the one that my favorite wife, Rachel, gave to me as my firstborn. I get to go see him. So now he's ready to go. And so he's heading on this way, and on the way, he gives these wonderful sacrifices to God out of thanksgiving and has a wonderful vision from God. And again, the promise is to establish them in the land of Canaan, not in Egypt. So the fulfillment of the promise isn't going to quite happen yet, but part of it's going to, because he's going to make this great nation out of Israel, Jacob. And so again, he visits him and he simply says, here I am. And he tells him, I'm going to create a great nation in you, through you, in the land of Egypt, and I'm going with you. That's probably the most favorite part that I have. Anytime I've ever said, here I am, send me, like use me, I always know that I'm not going alone, ever. I also know that he's already there because he doesn't exist in time. He's already working things out before I even know what's going on. He's working in me, and he's using what he's doing in me to affect other people. So there's so much going on here that we can know that when we say, yes, here I am, when we surrender it all, God's got lots of things that he's working, not just in you, but through you and around you. And then he reminds him, you will see Joseph. And then it's interesting the way that God tells him that Joseph is going to put his hand on your eyes. For a little while, it took me a little while to figure that out, but it just simply means Joseph's going to be there when you die. He's the one that's going to shut your eyes. How special is that? And it's affirming to Jacob, Israel, that you're not going to die on this traveling time. You're going to make it. You're going to see your son. You're going to spend some time with him, and he's going to be there when you pass. Great, great thought. Verses 5-7. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So they took their livestock and their goods, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. His sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. So again, they have these massive carts. They load everything up that they want to take with them, all the things that they had acquired in Canaan, all the things that they had brought back from Egypt. They load all the kids up, all the grandkids up. Everybody hops on, and they take off on a wonderful journey to see Joseph. Any thoughts before we get into this really big passage here? Any thoughts on that? Yes, sir. Ed. It's going to be a hard journey. Yeah. That's a really good point, because we're getting ready to find out that he's 120 years old. I'm sorry, 130. And when he gets there, when he gets to Beersheba, it very well could be that God's just comforting him of, look, dude, I know what's going on in your heart and your mind. Joseph really is there, and you're going to make it. So yeah, it's because we know that Jacob gets a little antsy. At least he did in his younger days. It doesn't seem as much now. But yeah, I really think that was more God coming alongside him and comforting him after he said, I'm going to go.
Make people a great nation there, where they're going to be enslaved, but God used that because people take care of the slaves. They feed them well. They want them to produce. So, they were in a protected environment that was awful for a while.
Yeah.
But it caused them to be able to flourish numbers-wise.
Absolutely. Especially, so that's a great point. God is moving them out of this promised land, but to do something else that's far more important. Here, they're going to have food, they're going to have shelter, they're going to be taken care of. And as we read through, especially chapter 47, with how Pharaoh just completely, it gushes over them. Like he just gives them everything and gives them jobs and just takes care of them. The things that Joseph does to make sure that his family is fine while he's taking care of the people of Egypt. We know when it gets to Exodus, that they have flourished so much that the new Pharaoh is like, there's too many of these people. We've got to do something. This is a problem. And that's kind of where it turns on them. I wonder, though, if Jacob has an idea of what it's going to be like for them when they get there. Do they know that they're walking into this slavery-minded opportunity or atmosphere? I would contend probably not at the beginning. But I would think they would started seeing, especially when we get into 47, how they make sure even the Egyptians are enslaved, really. Try not to get ahead of myself because 47 is kind of fun. Yeah. Sure. It's just you and I tonight, so it's all good.
When you, that person before you stopped at, he said, "Here am I." And remember, Jacob said, God called him, he said, "Here am I." And, you always wonder, would I be one of those who said, Jacob, like Samuel, and the way that my theory is, the way you can tell, is if you're researching the scriptures every day, if God's word is saying, you have no interest in what it's saying. People are, I wish God would speak to me.
Yeah, he does all the time. Yeah. It is. It can be. Yeah.
Yes, it is. There's always something said that will make sure you have lots of things that
Yeah, that's such a good point because what we see Jacob doing here is something very intentional. He just found out that his son that he hadn't seen in well over 20 years is alive and flourishing. He just found out that I can take my family to this land and be well taken care of, never have to worry about another thing. And what does he do? First thing he does is he goes and he makes a sacrifice to God. Like, if I hadn't seen my son in over 20 years, I'll make a sacrifice after I get there. You know what I'm saying? That's how we think. That's not what he does. He recognizes what God is doing, that God has done something supernatural here, and he's like, you know what? Thank you. And I also agree that the fact that he's in that posture is why God spoke to him even more. Yeah. So maybe to your statement of why don't we hear from him more is because we're not in the word. Maybe God is waiting for a posture of our heart of, here I am. Then we might hear a lot more. Rather than, I'll do it when you tell me. Yeah. And that's getting a little Sunday morning type stuff right there. Slow down. Any other thoughts? All right, this next section is basically giving us the lowdown of who's leaving and who's going into Egypt. So I'm just going to read through it. In the notes, I'm not going to go back and insult your intelligence, but I just want to explain the notes really quick. Each wife, Leah, Zilpah, Rachel, and what was the other one? Bilhah. There's a number beside. That's how many kids, usually the boys are the main ones that are mentioned, but kids, there's a couple of daughters that are mentioned. That number is what constitutes our 66 that's going in. And then later we'll find out that it's 70 because we're counting all the wives and Jacob in that as well. So that's kind of where all those numbers come from. But it's 70 when you add it all up and get there. So here's the passage from 8 through 25 or 27. Now these were the names of the children of Israel. Again, there's our phrase, Jacob and his sons who went to Egypt. Reuben was Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben were Hanak, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon were Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah were Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar were Puvah, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun were Sered, Elon, and Jaleel. These were the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padam Aram, with his daughter Dinah. So it's another child. All the persons, his sons and his daughters, were 33. The sons of Gad were Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodai, and Areli. The sons of Asher were Jimnah, Eshua, Esui, Beriah, and Sarah, their sister. The sons of Beriah were Heber and Malchiel. These were the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah, his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob, 16 persons. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, were Joseph and Benjamin, and to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, the priest of On, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin were Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mupim, and Ard. That's fun. These were the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. The son of Dan was Hushim. The sons of Naphtali were Jazeel, Guni, Jezer, and Shelam. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2 persons. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. So that, again, is listed out for you in our notes. I'm not going to go back and read all over those because that's not fun. But 70 people is the start of the children of Israel, who end up in the millions, by the way. Once they leave Egypt, it just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And the people of Israel are still a part of these families, these tribes. If you remember in our Revelation study, that God is going to call them, that there's still a remnant from each tribe that are going to be represented in the end times. Do you remember, for those of you that were here for the Revelation study, that we talked about that? That's still going to be a part from these guys' names. I find that fascinating. Verses 28 through 34 kind of gets us into where they finally get there. Joseph is going to see dad, and it spills over into chapter 47. So here we go. Unless anybody had any questions about any of those names. Did you recognize some of those names? Hopefully you did, because some of those were important, like Naaman, Job. Some of those guys were in there. All right, anyway, verse 28. Then he sent Judah. Remember, Judah is one of the brothers, before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen. So they didn't have MapQuest or Apple Maps, right? So they had to send actually somebody to say, hey, where are we going? So Judah goes, finds out where they're going, and they go back. So they came to the land of Goshen. So Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel, and he presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Can you imagine what kind of family reunion that was? Like, I can't imagine Joseph seeing Judah come back and hear that, okay, we're almost here. We just need to know where to go. And then when he sends him out, I can only imagine him readying his chariot, getting ready to go see his dad. And he gets there, and what do? They give each other a massive hug, and they just weep. This is 20 or so years in the making, probably closer to 30 now. 30 years waiting, wondering, will I ever see dad again? How's he doing? How's this going to work? And then all of these crazy plans and scenarios that God has worked out to put Joseph in this very spot to be able to save his dad and his brothers. All of this is coming to full circle and connecting now. And then Joseph is right in the middle of it. Basically, under God's guidance, calling the shots. He's in control of all of this, even though God is ultimately in control. But Joseph is controlling, he's leveraging this opportunity to save his family. Can't imagine. Israel, dad, says to Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen your face because you are still alive. Don't we say the dumbest things sometimes? Right? I mean, when our emotions get out of whack, we just say things without even thinking. Joseph has just seen his dad. His dad has seen his son, and now he's like, okay, I can die now. While we get that sentiment, we understand what he's saying. I just think I would have said it differently, right? But his life is complete. He's done it all. He's seen it all. This was the last thing that was lacking. This completes his life. And he's just, okay, God, whenever you're ready, I'm good. Then Joseph says to his brothers, to his father's household. I love, again, he kind of goes into Egypt mode, into second in command mode here. I will go up and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and those of my father's house who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for their occupation has been to feed livestock. They have brought their flocks, their herds, and all that they have. So it shall be when Pharaoh calls you and says, so he says, here's what I'm going to tell Pharaoh. And when Pharaoh calls you to come talk to him, here's what you need to say. He's going to ask you, what is your occupation? That you shall say, your servant's occupation has been with livestock from our youth even till now, both we and also our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. So what's interesting is Joseph is letting his brothers and his nephews in on a little piece of understanding how the Egyptians work. In that last phrase, it tells us that the Egyptians do not either like shepherds or just like shepherding. It's kind of beneath them. It's low man on totem pole. They don't want to do it. And Joseph knows this, and he knows his brothers are going to need work, and he knows that his brothers are very skilled in shepherding. Their dad, for crying out loud, organized and orchestrated different colors of sheep being created. Like, they know what they're doing. Yes. What video game is that from? That's a video game thing. That took me back, way back. Seriously, that was great. Thank you. I needed that. So I'm sure their dad taught them all that he knew. Like, this is what they do. And so Joseph is leveraging what they do to help Pharaoh out, because he knows Pharaoh's having a hard time getting people to shepherd. And so he comes to his brothers and says, listen, here's what I'm going to tell Pharaoh. Here's what I know he's going to ask you. And here's how you need to respond to the most powerful man in the world. I'm giving you the answers to this test so that you'll pass and not screw it up. So again, Judah goes ahead. Joseph shows up. Great family reunion. Here's what we're going to do. I've already worked this plan out. Again, I love how he goes from, I'm a kid again. I see dad, Pharaoh mode, right? He goes right into Pharaoh mode. And so he tells them how it's going to work. And that takes us right into chapter 47. Any thoughts so far on chapter 46? I know that was kind of quick, but with that organizing of the sons and the kids, it kind of, there's not really a lot there.
I want to know what the brothers are thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And were they doing it in secret? Were they doing it in front of everybody? I would imagine, Eric, that constantly they have been just in like, on their best behavior. Had to be, right? And was there any conversation between Jacob and them? Because obviously Moses didn't record that for us. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. Can't help but think that there was, like some type of clarifying. But again, Joseph sent them away saying, it's not worth it. It's not worth the effort. And maybe dad is just so beyond excited, he don't even care. Like, I don't care. I get to see my son. You know? I don't know. It's a great question. Because they got some kind of feeling somehow, somewhere. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Yeah. Shepherding, yeah.
And it's just sort of like Egypt at that time, and he kind of represents the world. Who makes a good shepherd,
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah. Because they really don't like the good shepherd. Really, nobody over in that region likes the good shepherd for the most part. Anybody else? Shall we jump into 47? Or call it a night? Go home. Just kidding. Here we go. Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, my father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan. And indeed, they are in the land of Goshen. And Joseph, took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to dwell in the land because your servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. So Joseph gets back, he goes straight to Pharaoh and says, hey, just want you to know my family made it. They're all here. And they're located in the land of Goshen, which is what exactly they had already agreed upon. And he's excited to share this news with Pharaoh. I would imagine he's just beside himself. And he brings 5 men from his brothers. Now, that's an interesting phrase because at first I thought it was his brothers. He brought 5 brothers. And so then I started thinking, well, who's the 5? Which 5 is he going to choose? Like, who would have been? We don't know. But as I further read, could it be that he's actually talking about just 5 random men that came in that 70? Could it be 5 nephews that he had? And the reason I ask that is they say, us and our fathers. Is he talking about grandfathers? They only had one dad unless they used the grandfather as that. But Jacob really was the only herdsman that was really a part of that. And so did he just choose 5 of the best looking, strongest looking, smartest ones out of the entire group? I don't know. And really when I was studying it, nobody really specified one way or the other. So you can kind of land where you would like. But Pharaoh simply looks at these 5 guys and says, what do you do? Which is exactly what Joseph said he was going to ask. And notice how they start off. Again, your servants. They recognize their place. They recognize that they are in a foreign land, that they're somewhere else, that this has been a gift to them. They are here on the good graces and nice generosity of Pharaoh. And he says, we are shepherds. And again, us and our fathers are shepherds. And then they asked for permission for what they've already been granted. Can we shepherd our flocks on this land that you've given us? Well, it's kind of already yours. So I'm not sure why you're asking, but that's kind of what we do when we're in speaking with somebody that has great authority. We're a little bit more apt to be a little more humble. And so that's kind of what's happening here. And then Pharaoh looks at Joseph and says, listen, in verse 5, here's what he says. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph saying, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. So he basically looks at Joseph and says, listen, everything that I have, everything that I own, all the land is right in front of your face. You know it better than I know it. You make the best decision. You give them the best land. We talked about land of Goshen. If you think that's the best, that's where we want them. But here's what I want you to do. I have a lot of herds that I don't really have any workers. So give me the best men that you can find. Now, you could assume that this is happening right here. You could also make the case that this is kind of we are being privy to a conversation that happened before Joseph's family got there. And that's why Joseph is telling them all this. Either way, the idea is Pharaoh says, have the nice land, give me some workers, let's do life together. That's basically the gist of what's happening here. And so they do. And he just realizes that the people of Egypt just aren't going to do what he needs them to do. And so now he's got this wonderful group of shepherds, and he's going to put them to work. Any thoughts on this little reunion and interaction with Pharaoh? Yeah, Bill.
Just the fact that just the impression that Joseph still has on Pharaoh is asking him, finding 5 guys, or finding the guys that are like the best, and put them in charge. It's not because he believes that these guys might be good guys. It's because of the association with Joseph.
Absolutely.
Because of who he knows Joseph, and he is so trusting of Joseph. It's not because Pharaoh's just this laid-back guy who's cool about everything, whatever you want to do with it. It's because of the fact that he is so enamored, feels so good about Joseph and the decisions that Joseph would have had to have made over the years, not just the dream interpretation. Like he would have had to have constantly backed it up and reinforced who God is to Pharaoh, and to say, like, this is who I am, to the point where now Pharaoh's like, whatever it is, you say it, it's not.
That's so good that Pharaoh is really just leveraging the trust and character that Joseph has and saying, I've watched you. You've made me a ton of money. You've saved our people. You've saved other people. Dude, I trust your decision. And you're right. It's not the fact that these guys are really good herdsmen. It's the fact that Joseph says that they are. And that's all that needs to be said. And what isn't that how we should be living? In our workplace, in our neighborhood, wherever we're at, we should live in such a way that people recognize that, hey, if Alan says he's going to do that, he's going to do it. If he says that person's trustworthy, I trust his judgment, I can trust that person, which is a big responsibility.
And you get there because you do what you said you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only way to get there, is to be consistent and intentional all the way through. And we see that that's what Joseph does. And in fact, in just a minute, we're going to see just how good Joseph really is, like how impressive he is. Any other thoughts?
I guess the other thing would be the level of trust that Joseph has in his plan to be.
Yeah. And what's funny about that, Earl, speaking of his trust in them, not a lot of trust there, except the fact that they stay true to their word in these last 2 interactions. And I would contend, Earl, I think he's seen a change in their heart as well. The fact that the way that they defended Benjamin when they brought him in, and Judah was like, no, I'm staying. We can't do this to Dad. So I would agree. I think he's realizing that there's something different about these men. Sure. Yeah. Anybody else? All right, let's finish out this little section here. Verse 7 through 11. Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. That's amazing, right? He's giving a legitimate blessing on behalf of Jacob, on behalf of God, and he's blessing Pharaoh, the leader of Egypt. I wonder if partly because it's, hey, you're saving our life, partly because thanks for taking care of my boy, or partly because he just knows this is what needs to be done. Pharaoh has been taking care of the known world at this point in time, or at least in this land where the Nile has not produced the fertile ground that it needs to produce and created this famine. And so he blesses him. Pharaoh says to Jacob, how old are you? Now, if you came in and you gave me a blessing, and I looked at you and said, how old are you? It seems kind of rude, right? But it's more asking like, tell me your story. Give me your history. That's really what's being asked here. And we know that because of the answer that's given. Watch what he says. Jacob says to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage or 130 years. He says, I've been living 130 years. And I love how he uses pilgrimage. He basically says, I've been on a journey, man. If you only knew where I was at, where I've been, the things I've done, what life has thrown at me, I'm on a pilgrimage. And this pilgrimage is to see God. It's not just a journey to get to the end. I'm on a pilgrimage to be in the presence of God for the rest of my days. He says, few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers and the days of their pilgrimage. So Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. Joseph situated his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses. Now, again, it seems like this is a different spot, just another name for the land of Goshen. It's probably more known by the land of Ramses in the Egyptian culture than what Moses used as just the land of Goshen, which would probably have spoken more favorable to the children of Israel. Then Joseph provided as Pharaoh had commanded, Then Joseph provided his father and his brothers and all his family's household with bread according to the number in their families. So in this meeting, Jacob gives the blessing. He asks how old he is, and then he kind of gives him a little bit of his story of his pilgrimage. He says, my days have been few and evil. In other words, I haven't lived as long as my family, my predecessors, my grandfathers, and my great-grandfathers. However, I've had some ups and downs in my life. I've had some evil days in there. I've done some things I'm not so proud of. And then that kind of how we talk about in it, even in our own testimony of our pilgrimage to God, right? We're on this journey. There's some days that I'd rather not remember and talk about. I've had some interesting ones, but then there's been some good ones. But then he says, I've still got a little ways to go. But I'm on a pilgrimage just like my dad was. And this pilgrimage, again, is to get to this promised land. Gives him Goshen, which is the land of Ramses. And then here's what's interesting. He provides his family, not just his dad, but all 70 of them, enough food to take care of them. And they don't have to pay for it. Now, this grain, when it talks about bread, it just simply means that they get the grain that would have given them the opportunity to make bread to be able to survive. So that's what that's talking about. Now, we're going to find out in just a little bit. I'm going to get ahead of myself just on purpose. We're going to find out that usually what was given was a year's worth. And so we can assume, we can make a plausible argument that when they land in the land of Goshen and Joseph gives them their provisions, it's enough for a year to where they don't have to pay for it. They don't have to worry about it. They just need to exist and then work for Pharaoh. So, any thoughts on that right there? On the blessing from Jacob? Okay, fair enough. Verse 13 through 19. Now there was no bread in all the land. In other words, there's no grain. For the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. So there's no extra food. They've blown through the grain that they may have had in their time period or had been allotted to them. There's still grain stored up, but it's coming kind of to the end where they need to replenish their grain. They've ran out their personal stash. And so Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. I would imagine Pharaoh had a big grin. All this money that he's been collecting over the last 5 years, because this is about the 6th year of the famine, and it'll make sense here in a minute because he gives them grain for another year, and then they come back for one more year, and then he gives them seed to start planting because the famine's getting ready to end. So this is about the end of the 5th year of the famine, and the amount of money that he's collected, not just from Egypt, but from the land of Canaan, is so much that he finally cashes it in and brings it to Pharaoh. So when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the money has failed." What that means is we ain't got any money left. It's not that the money isn't worth anything. They don't have any money. If I'm only able to buy grain There's nothing else to buy. There's no produce. There's probably nothing being constructed or built. There's nothing being created because I have to concentrate and keep my money specifically to make sure that I have enough to buy food. And if I have nothing to sell, then I have nothing coming in. And if I'm only spending, guess what? It's going to run out. You're going to be in the negative. And that's what's happening. In the end of this 5th year, they're coming to Joseph saying, we don't have any more grain. We don't have any more bread that we can eat because the grain is gone, our personal stash. But I have no money. I can't buy anything. I haven't been able to sell anything. I can't purchase. And so are you going to let us die? You've developed this wonderful plan, but you didn't account for the fact that you got all our money. So I can't buy anything else. Joseph says in verse 16, give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock if the money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph. Joseph gave them bread in exchange for their horses, the flocks, the cattle, the herds, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. When that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, we will not hide from my Lord that our money is gone. My Lord also has our herds of livestock. There's nothing left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate. These are dire straits that we are seeing. By the way, this mimics what's probably going to be looking like in the end times as well, just so you know. These Egyptian people are coming to him and saying, we got no money. He says, you know what? I get that. I appreciate that. We've got this system set up. I want to make sure that you have what you need, but you have to pay for it. I can't just give it to you. So what do you have left? And they're like, all we've got is our livestock. He's like, okay, bring them all to me. We'll take that as collateral. It's your payment. And that's what they do. That year runs out. They come back again and say, you already know we don't have any money. You already taken our livestock, the only thing that we could have given you. Our only plan, our only idea is, here's our house, here's our land, and here's our lives. Take us. We will be servants for you for the rest of our days. We just need to eat. And he says, okay. And so I just find it interesting that they are willing to sell everything they have just to fill the appetite that they have. And doesn't that sound just like us? In our need and wantonness before Christ, we are willing to sell our soul just to get a fix for that appetite that's within us. And if we're not careful, sometimes even in our spiritual journey, in our own pilgrimage, we get to the place because we haven't been feeding on his word that we start selling things off to fill that void that only he can fill. And we've got to be very careful with that. And Joseph, many times people would think that Joseph is being very shrewd, very, very selfish, capitalizing on. Joseph is doing what is right. I'm not giving you anything. I will supply you with your needs, but it's going to cost you. Just like salvation is a gift, but it comes at a cost. You have to give your life to him. You have to surrender all that you have. So yes, it is free, but there's a cost associated with it as well. I know, it's messing with some of your theology a little bit, but that's the truth. Any thoughts on that? I know I didn't really stick to the notes too much. I got too excited as I was reading and explaining it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. A page at a time. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's easy to take for granted, but that's how we should.
Yeah, that's a great comparison to what these people are doing just to eat, and we should be willing to scrap everything just to eat, just to feed for a bit. Sure. Any other thoughts? No? No takers on that? Okay. Let's keep going. 20 through 26. Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. I mean, Pharaoh's loving this kid. Like he's making him money hand over fist. He made all the money. He's taking all the money. There's no money left. He's got all their livestock. And now he owns the entirety of Egypt. Like, it's his. For every man of the Egyptians sold his field because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end. So in other words, he's just kind of cramming them into the cities to keep them close to where he can manage them and take care of them a little bit easier. Plus, they don't own any land, so they have to live somewhere. Only the land of the priests, this was interesting to me. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had rations allotted to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their rations which Pharaoh gave them therefore they did not sell their lands. So these priests, whether they're Christian priests or not, they were special to Pharaoh, and he realized that the gods that they spoke for, lived after, whatever, they were special people. And so he left them alone. He gave them what they needed. They didn't have to buy the grain. They got what they needed to be able to survive. Therefore, they didn't have to sell their land, nor did they have to get rid of anything else because they don't have anything else. And so Pharaoh took care of them. Joseph says to the people in verse 23, "Indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. It shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh. 4/5 shall be your own as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your household, and as food for your little ones." So they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of the Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. So again, Joseph said, "All right, here's how this is going to work. I'm going to give you what you need. I'm going to make sure you have all that you need. However, I'm also going to give you seed," which is what they asked for. But Joseph knows that the famine's getting ready to end, which leads me to believe that we're in that last year. So he says, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and start sowing seed because soon the harvest is going to be enough. But when the harvest comes, you're not going to need us anymore. But because we own the land, and because we've given you this seed without causing you to pay for it, you're going to owe us. 1/5 of whatever you harvest is ours. The rest, 4/5, all yours. Take care of your family and whatever else you want to do with it. But we get 1/5. It's a great deal to me. I've given you all that I have anyway, and you're letting me live here and work the fields that I previously owned, and I get to live for free and eat all that I want, basically. It's not a bad deal. We just know that it turns into a bad deal later." So he's collected all the money, gives them everything they need, and everybody but the priests are affected in this. And he sees the end of the famine coming, and he makes sure that he takes care of his people and starts planning ahead. I wonder if in that year 7, if they start looking at the grain bins thinking, "Oh boy, going to be cutting it close. It's going to be close." What did they have any left over? I wonder was it like the 5 loaves and 2 fishes? Did they have a lot left over? Or did God work it in such a way that, man, it was just managed down to that last little piece of grain? I don't know. Fun to think about though, right? I mean, God orchestrated it, so I would think that he probably let him sweat it out a little bit and probably cut it close, right? I'm sure maybe, well, I was getting ready to say there was probably some mismanagement, but not with Joseph managing it. There probably wasn't. May have been some stealing here and there. Who knows? 7 years of learning the system and learning how to work the system, because we humans are really good about that, right? And so, I don't know. It's just interesting and silly to think about. Here we go. Last part, and then we'll talk. Verse 27, "So Israel, Jacob, dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen. They had possessions there and grew and multiplied exceedingly. That simply means their wealth grew, their herds grew, and in people grew. Their families grew. It's how we get to when we get to Exodus chapter 1 and Pharaoh looks and says, there are too many of these people, they outnumber us. That's what that's referring to. They don't have any stress. They have land. They have food. Everything is taken care of. They don't have to worry about a thing. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years after saying, I'm ready to die. God allows him to watch his son in action and his family continue to grow where he can watch this promise be fulfilled. When the time drew near that Israel must die, Jacob, he called his son Joseph and said to him, now if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. In other words, make a covenant with me. That was just a weird way they did that. We don't do that anymore because that's just awkward and weird. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place. And he, Joseph, said, I will do as you have said. Then he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. I didn't know really what that phrase meant until you kind of read into the next chapter. And he laid down ready to die. He knew his time was coming. That was basically his last major act before he lays the blessings out on Joseph's boys. But he bowing down is just, I'm done. He's just done. So, interesting little conversation between his son Joseph and his dad. And he just simply says, don't leave me here. Don't bury me here. There is a cave that our forefathers had. You can find it in chapter 23, Machpelah. And he's like, when I die and you leave this place, take me there. Don't leave me here. And so for 17 years, he's been able to watch his son, his other sons interact, thrive, but now he's ready to die. And so when we get into chapters 48 and 49, that's kind of what we see. He gives the last blessings, the last testimonies, and then he's going to die. So that was kind of sad. But anyway, what happened? Any thoughts on the last part of chapter 47 or any part for that matter? Yes. What, the children of Israel? No, I don't think so. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't think they realize that they're going to be in this form of slavery that they're going to be in. I think they realize, because they say you're servants. They know they are here to serve. But this Pharaoh is not the Pharaoh that comes later. He is the next one that comes is truer to Egyptian, and he's just nasty. He's a nasty guy. So no, not yet. Right now, it's kind of a honeymoon phase. They're just enjoying life. Hello? It's okay. You can answer it. Let us put it on speaker. Let me talk to her. I'm just kidding. That was so funny. That'd be great. Anybody else? Yes.
Jacob believed that. So he told Joseph, hey, you guys are coming out at some point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good call.
Here. I don't want to be buried here because this isn't our place. I want to go where God promised me. You know, so Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and now Joseph. That's 4 generations.
Yeah. Solid generations, yeah.
Most of the time, parents pursue God, kids kind of,
Yeah.
and 3rd generation.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I didn't catch that, Ed, in studying that is one of the things that God told Jacob, that I will bring you out. And so Jacob's telling Joseph, forewarning him, like, we're not staying here forever, just so you know. Like, don't leave, don't forget me when we roll out. Make sure you got me with you, please. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, time is up. Glad you came. Shall I pray? God, thank you for your word. Thanks for just a neat little picture of our world, us existing in it, as we see with the Egyptians and how they were so quick to sell out. Granted, it's food. I get it. But God, we sell out for so much less. And we cheapen our pilgrimage because we want something else to fulfill us. We're not patient enough to wait for the moving of your Spirit or for the completion of the promised land or the returning of you. So I pray that tonight we can be challenged and encouraged to know that you are coming back, that you are working out all kinds of good stuff, that we just need to be diligent and faithful and to sell out to you and to you alone, for you're the only thing that can truly fulfill us. So thank you for the promises. Thank you for the promises that we read about and watch be fulfilled that were huge and monumental, that could only increase our faith in knowing that the promise of your return and taking those believers, us believers, home to reside with you forever in eternity and to rule and reign with you, that will happen. So thank you for that. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week.